Working for a living, jobs. We talk a lot about that here on One Detroit. It's the future of work. But for many people, people have done prison time. It can be quite a challenge getting a job. So we turn now to Mario Bueno, our special correspondent, specially qualified to talk about this. Tell me about that, Mario.
I served 19 years from the age of 16 for second-degree murder. Going on my second master's degree from Mike Ilitch School of Business, and even with that, it's extremely challenging finding employment because of that felony.
So then, we hear from others in a situation like yours, call them ex-offenders, returning citizens, just plain felons. What is their future of work? Take a look.
We're up north, Petoskey, with construction company owner Kim Uyeda in the midst of remodeling her own property. She scored a surplus bathroom countertop.
I found it on the marketplace. Being a felon, I know how to mind my budget. You know, 17 cents an hour in prison, you learn to do a lot with a little. So for me in my line of work, it's been great because I don't advertise. All my work is word of mouth.
Right.
And we've been able to employ myself and 9 other people year round, you know, just on word of mouth.
Uyeda, me, and others you'll meet today, we've all done prison time.
What were you charged with?
Filing a false police report.
And what was the situation?
So at that time, I had been jumped outside of my home, and I dialed 911 for an ambulance, and they sent the sheriff's department. I was disoriented, didn't know what was going on. When I got to the hospital, the officer was like explaining to me what he said happened, and I was like, wait a minute, so you're saying I did this? So I did this.
Who was he?
That was the officer that was in charge of the sheriff.
You said he was explaining what he thought had happened?
Yes.
Uyeda says she knows who attacked her, says the sheriff wasn't buying it, that she hurt herself.
And the next time I see him is later on that evening with an arrest warrant saying that I had confessed by stating that I did this.
Uyeda couldn't remember what she told the officer. Meanwhile, the prosecutor added on even more charges based on her 911 phone call.
I got 6 years.
6 years for filing a false police report?
That's correct.
6 years?
Yep, because of the points system. Even though my felony was 9 years prior, I still called the points for it because it has to be 10 years before they drop the points off. So
the old felony? Writing a bad check.
So this used to be the closet for this room over here?
It wasn't even.
It wasn't even? Oh, yeah, because you built another wall.
Her actual sentence, 6 to 20 years. A case study for those concerned about overly harsh sentencing. But we're talking about how she's hit a limit with her business, her work, her livelihood.
When was the last time you actually made an attempt to get your contractor's license?
It was 2 years ago. Not only does it hurt me as a person who wants to be a contractor and not being able to take larger contracts. So there's financially, I'm kept down to the 70% range instead of the 100% range, right? But I can't employ as many people because I don't have as big of a project that I can take on without a license. So financially, it's hurting the county, it's hurting tax revenues, and it's also hurting because I'm not training new people to do what I do. Built-in dressers. I'm already doing all of the work. So the only thing I'm missing is this piece of paper.
Michigan licensing requirements are clear. A no-go for Uyeda.
Filing a false police report, it's considered fraud. So then they say, oh, nope, you're a fraudster, no licensing. The programming that you take within MDOC, so I took all the courses they had to offer in building trades. And they tell you, go take your test, you'll get your builder's license. You're teaching us a trade we cannot get licensed in, we can only ever be a laborer in.
They're teaching us a trade for which we cannot get licensed in.
Because we are felons.
Kenneth Nixon is a Wayne State student and employed with Safe and Just.
I need to check in.
He advocates for returning citizens.
Nixon, Kenneth Nixon.
He's networking at a symposium about just that at WSU.
Your wrongful conviction and then post-incarceration, how did that affect your employment opportunities?
It still affects me to this day.
And you've been home since when?
2021.
Nixon did 16 years. A double murder conviction overturned because of work by the prosecutor's conviction integrity unit and the Cooley Law Innocence Project.
There's a misconception that when you're exonerated, your record gets expunged. That is not a true statement. There's an entire legal process that has to take place, and it's still on my record 2 years later. I applied for a big car company. I have a family member that's a supervisor, has been a supervisor for decades there. Gave me a referral, and I go through the assessment process. I pass everything. I get a phone call from the background specialist, and he says, you failed the background check. I'm like, how? After about 5 or 10 minutes of me trying to explain that this was clearly an error. The error also says that I'm serving a life sentence right now. So what do you think happened? I broke out of prison and applied for a job at your company.
Nixon did get another call back with a job offer, but he already found something else in which he's very qualified. Having been trained in interpersonal skills behind bars coupled with his life experience.
Elevating the message. Yeah, absolutely.
I pride myself on being able to communicate effectively, but what happens to someone that's not as communicative as I am and can't explain the difficulties and the perils of the system?
Here's my old friend Aaron Nall. He's training for his barber's license downriver in Southgate.
I taught myself, and I worked as a prison barber for 25, 30 years.
25 to 30 years?
Yes, and I really enjoyed it. I found something that I could do that helped other people smile within a place like that.
Paroled after 35 years last fall, Nall went to an automotive aftermarket production plant and got the good news.
I take the pleasure in offering you a full-time position as a general laborer on first shift. So it's not like you were just temporarily hired. You were hired full-time.
No, I was hired full-time. I actually got hired. I told them at the interview that I had just got out of prison, et cetera, et cetera.
And what was your crime?
Second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder?
Yes.
Nall went to prison at 15, 35 years ago. That first job out didn't last very long.
Yep. The one day you worked?
That's the one day I worked.
Due to not meeting the requirements of the pre-employment background screening, please turn in all your equipment if applicable.
She called me in the office. She actually asked me to reapply for the job in like a year. She said it was just too soon with me getting out. They said that they watched me for the day, said that I was actually an excellent worker. I got along with everybody, but because of the history, they would have to let me go. That didn't work out. I just said, forget it, I'm going to school full time.
What we gonna do today?
Came here and been going ever since.
You know, we have expectations before we come home. True or not true?
True.
And then life hits you, right? Life hits you with a brick.
Life hits you, not with a brick, with a boulder.
So my point is, be honest, you cried, didn't you?
Yeah, I cried in the car on the way home. I cried out of frustration. At what point would I be seen for who I am today opposed to the kid that committed my crime?
The common denominator for Aaron Nall, Kenneth Nixon, and Kim Uyeda. They gained valuable training in prison and were able to apply those skills while still incarcerated, like cutting hair, communication skills, and building trades.
So this is 8,000 square feet?
8,000 square feet home, yep.
So they were really prepared for the real world. The problem? So many others are not prepared and far more likely to return to prison.
We're becoming a society that has exiled people because of mistakes. Every one of us has made a mistake that could have landed us in prison. $99 check, anything over that is a felony in the state of Michigan. 2 drinks and get in the car, that's a felony in the state of Michigan. So how easy, every person that you talk to could have been in prison. That easily.
The reality is we grow and we evolve. We grow out of, negative mindsets. That science tells us that. Evolution of life tells us that. No one is the same 20, 30 years later. Give people a chance. Give people an opportunity to prove that they are no longer the person that society judged them as decades ago.
Are you in a state of gratitude now that this all actually unraveled as it did?
Actually, I am. I look at it this way. One door closed and another one open. The door that opened is where I'm actually supposed to be.
Aaron Nall, he still keeps that letter that told him he was fired close by.
I said it's their loss, not mine. And I look at that letter from time to time to keep myself grounded and keep myself motivated to do what's right.
Mario, we're working on more stories along these lines, prisoner reentry. But what about you? What's your future of work?
My accounting and tax firm, American Dream Accounting and Taxes, and hopefully continued collaborations with PBS with you, Bill.
I think it's going that way. Look for more stories along these lines here on One Detroit, talking about prisoner reentry and the future of work.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.